Hello, and welcome to the Content Distribution and Media Power Hour. My name is Marcella Walsh, Live Content Coordinator at AVIXA. Today we'll be discussing production optimization. For a successful result, communication is key. Before we begin the discussion, please note the following. If you are viewing live, my slides are not forwarding. If you are viewing live today, you will receive one CTS, there we go, CTSD or CTSI RU credit. Credits will appear on your transcripts within about 5 to 7 business days. For any issues, please email webinars@avixa.org. The webinar will be approximately 45 to 60 minutes and all attendees will be placed on mute. Click the speech bubble icon to open the event chat where you can communicate with all attendees. Please introduce yourself in the event chat and let us know where you are logging in from today and what topics you would like to see in future power hours. If you have questions during the presentation, please enter them into the Q&A window so that the moderator can address them at the end of the webinar. To access the Q&A window, simply move your cursor to the bottom of your live stream video box to locate the Q&A icon and click to open. Please do not enter your questions into the chat window. You will have access to this recorded webinar at avixa.org/webinars. Actually, avixa.org/training section/webinars/2021 recorded webinars within about 5 business days. You can also access other content distribution and media power hours at the same link. Our content distribution and media power hour moderator is Deborah Jones, AVIT sales manager for the Queen Elizabeth II Center. Deborah is responsible for planning and managing the technical aspects of the center's client portfolio. Previously, she worked for the commercial arm of a charity organization, the Chartered Institute of Environmental Health, where she established an events unit, organizing conferences, selling exhibition space, seminars, award ceremonies, and gala dinners, and ran their publications, commissioning, editing, publishing, and selling their book list. And now I will hand things over to Deborah. Take it away, Deborah. Thank you.
Hello, good day to everyone. I've seen all the chat. It's very exciting to have so many people there. I'm absolutely delighted to welcome our panel today. As Marcella has said, we have Kevin Chater and James Mead from BlackRock. We have Michelle Dixon from Blue Jeans, Donald Gazakis, the VP for HB Live, talking about live events, rental and staging, and Jesse Miller from Midtown Video. It's a really expansive panel, and we're really looking forward to talking to you all. As Marcella says, do use the Q&A. I'm really interested in watching the chat. And without more ado, I'd like to hand it over to Kevin and James.
Hi there. Thank you for this opportunity. I guess as an introduction, I'm James, as Deborah just kindly introduced me. I've worked for BlackRock and the legacy firms for quite some time. And part of my responsibilities is the video component of that, which we call broadcast media. Kevin leads that service. And I'm sure we're going to get into really great detail about what we've been doing pre-pandemic, during pandemic, and how we've coped with that. Kevin, do you want to give a brief introduction?
Yeah, sure, no problem. Yeah, my name's Kevin, based in London. I'm head of video production for EMEA. Good to chat to you all. Looking forward to the discussion.
All right, sorry about that. I'm Don Gazakis, Vice President for HB Live here in Connecticut. We're a live events production company and have successfully bridged from in-person events to hybrid and online events, and look forward to talking about all the content that goes into that.
Michelle Dixon, Blue Jeans by Verizon, and I am the trainer and now project manager for Event Assist. We do everything from video conferencing for meetings, and as well as assisting clients now with this new world in getting events up and going virtually and showing them how to do so, as well as helping them run the production.
So I was just going to ask Jesse to say a few words, as you're the only one who hasn't, and then I'll ask Kevin and James to go through and tell us how they got an everything out to those 16,000 home workers this time last year?
Thank you. I'm Jesse Miller with Midtown Video in Miami, Florida. We work on lots of custom projects, from building production studios to assisting with live, hybrid, and remote production, what I call distributed production.
Okay, so James and Kevin, if you'd like to tell us about your multimedia solutions team, which I know James is head of, and how you produce the engaging video content and all the comms when you had to go out at the beginning of the pandemic, because I know you're a massive global organization, and we'd be really interested to hear.
Yeah, sure. And it's probably worth giving you some context on who we are, because I'm sure there's some people in the audience that aren't familiar with who BlackRock are. And if you are, you're probably quite confused as to why we're on this webinar. But BlackRock is an asset manager. It's the largest asset manager. There is, as Deborah said, 16,000 employees, and we have many, many clients across all sorts of industries, and we pretty much manage assets in every sort of domicile, every single asset you could possibly wave a stick at. So we're a big organization, and we also do a lot of advisory work. So some of the challenges we faced during the 2008 crisis, we help to manage. So central banks, governments, we help to do that. So as you can understand, we've got a hell of a lot to talk about within asset management and within our BlackRock universe, and we have in-house studios, really, as probably the best way to describe that. So as I said in my intro, part of that is a video team that Kevin leads. And to give you an idea of what we did pre-pandemic, we have TV studios in 3 of our offices, one of them being our London office where Kevin and I work from. And we produce lots of content from there, and that can be TV hits, that can be sort of interviews with fund managers that we're pushing out to a variety of different platforms and mediums. And we've also got a whole bunch of remote kit that we use to sort of roam around the office, do those interviews from, and do sort of montage videos. We have animation components, so we have a team that generate that content. So we're busy all day, every day, and even our internal clients, as we call them, our colleagues and staff, they're surprised that we're not sitting there twiddling our thumbs waiting for their phone call to demand that video that they need in 2 days' time. So that's kind of a brief elevator pitch of what we did pre-pandemic. And then roughly a year ago, as we all know and have experienced, COVID hit, and we pretty quickly, I feel quite proud with how BlackRock's sort of responded to the pandemic, and adapted what we do across all of our businesses, but particularly within what we call multimedia solutions and our video team. We quickly mobilized our staff with kit that for the most part we had already. We talked about process, how we were going to deal with things. We had daily meetings twice a day, actually, once in the morning, once in the evening, just to see what was going on with our services. And then we adapted very quickly with the new normal and how we were going to produce video content, albeit from 16,000 home offices, if you like. So that's a brief introduction, and perhaps Kevin wants to pick up from that point and talk specifically about how we managed to produce that content and what we did to deliver that.
Yeah, sure. I think we probably all agree that the final fortnight before being sent home from the office were fairly intense. There was a lot of planning that went into it. We spent a lot of time putting together some best practices which we could farm out for iPhone filming, educating the clients on, uploading the OneDrive app to their iPhone and transferring the footage to us. So we was working on all these things in the background before we actually got sent home. We also were asked to work on several productions around employees setting up their kit at home. So a lot of these people had never been sent home with a laptop before, or never been dispatched a really nice curved screen desktop or anything. They had no idea how to set these things up. So we had to work with the technology teams to script those videos out, and a lot of choreography had to go into them, because BlackRock is a big company. We support Mac and Windows, so we had to think a lot about all that sort of stuff. In terms of just my team, it was just getting the guys mobilized with laptops, with MacBooks, with the power that they needed to be able to upload and download their stuff, making sure they had the graphics packages, the moguts for Adobe Premiere that we all use. And it was just making sure that they had, enough drives and things like that to continue working for the foreseeable future, because we didn't know how long we was going to be at home. And the practices and the processes have just kind of built from then on, from day one. The checking in on teams, the daily meetings. So yeah, I'm quite proud as well of how we've done it, and we kept everybody safe and up and running and employed, and all the messaging's been consistent throughout. So yeah, it's been really good.
And Kevin, do you want to briefly touch upon how we actually filmed people? So all those things I talked about earlier, the fund manager interviews, the montage videos, how are we tackling that now we're at home and everybody?
Yeah, so historically in the office as a global firm, the teams were shooting on C300s. We had LED light panels that we run around the office with, all the microphone kit that you could imagine. We've gone from that to self-shooting on iPhones. So we've all become proficient with educating and training these poor people that were asked to make these home videos. They're not used to it at all. So it was a learning curve for us to try and mentor them with their setups at home. So it could be as simple as putting a 15-minute meeting in just before they're due to do their recording, and one of our producers will literally dial in and handhold them through the setup, making sure they haven't got their phone on portrait, they're on landscape, making sure they're facing the window nicely, so they're lit by natural light, all the things that you probably don't think about when you've been asked to record a video of yourself on your iPhone. So we've all become very proficient with doing that.
And I was going to ask, how did you engage with your clients on a regular basis, Kevin? Because obviously you're doing all this running around. You must have had to isolate key people within your team to roll out this kind of program.
I'm not sure about isolating. I've only got a team of 3 in London. It's fairly small. In terms of communicating, we just all jumped on Teams straight away. I'm a big fan of Teams, and we was on that from day one, just checking in the morning, making sure people are safe. And then in terms of the clients, just checking in whenever you can to see what they need to do, see what their bosses are asking them to do, and just keeping things running that way. Teams has been absolutely amazing, I think.
And just to chime in, our clients, as we call them, our internal clients for the most part, I think it's fair to say that the demand from clients is being consistent pre-COVID, during COVID, and it seems to be getting more intense actually. So we've got a ticketing system where people submit tickets to us when they want a video produced. It's a reactive service that we operate in for the most part, and that demand did not cease at all, really. In fact, it was perhaps the opposite, where we're in financial services and we're talking about what the impact of COVID might be financially. I mean, we all deal with finance every single day. Your mortgage, your pension, your savings, whether you've got a job or not. I mean, we all need to stay on top of whether the future is going to be good or not so good. So we had quite a sustained demand for our services, certainly initially, and we've had to adapt all of our resources to make sure that we've got the right people and the right amount of people in the right place to meet that demand.
Kevin, you mentioned using Teams to communicate very well. If I can ask a question, were all of the members that you were communicating with already within the BlackRock Office 365 implementation, or were you also using Teams to communicate with maybe the guests that were outside of that network?
It's all internal. We were using Symphony quite heavily before Teams was rolled out, weren't we, James? But it seemed to be a fairly natural progression that the 365 was released throughout the firm, and it's been really widely accepted. We don't use it externally. It's all just internal.
And I was going to ask, I was going to bring Michelle in here. Michelle works for Blue Jeans, and I know that her specialty is in training. So I'm going to ask you about the training in relation and in contrast to what BlackRock were doing. But also, I know that you produce storyboards and like a dashboard during the pandemic, which obviously you've rolled out to your people now. And I'd be really interested to see how you coped with that from a different point of view. You're on mute, Michelle.
And I actually train people how to use video conferencing sites. So go figure. My name is Michelle Dixon. I'm with Blue Jeans by Verizon. And so that's a really great question. When this pandemic initially hit, being a video conferencing site, we already worked remotely for the most part in terms of our own internal workers. But what this brought on was a client base who then needed to get licensing, get them up and running, and teach them how to use it, as well as teach them how to work from home. And so we literally shifted and reskilled ourselves, our training team did, reskilled ourselves and created an environment where we had a class that we had live classes where we taught people how to work remotely from, hey, you need to take breaks, or you need to do these specific things in order to make sure that you're not looking like Wilson looking over the fence when you get online. Ways that they could communicate, because you have to understand their entire world changed. So what we're looking at is how do you increase and keep the inspiration and everything going when you're isolated at home without your coworkers. So our training team really refocused all of our initiative and started training people on how to work from home. We then had to deal with teaching them how to use their cell phones in some respects. And we have a large client base that reaches all from the person that needs to go to the doctor right now. So there's all of these different things that have come up during this pandemic, and we just repurposed the people that we already had in place and then relied on their skills. And that has allowed us to be able to help people in turn set up and plan and assist them with setting up their events that used to be live that now have to go to the virtual world. You know, how do you make that transition? How do you make that become so appealing or have that same engaging factor that you have when you have the energy of a lot of people in one place, where now you're just talking to a screen, basically looking at a camera, because if you look at the screen, then you're not looking at the people, like these, and teaching them little things like that. Like in order to engage with somebody on a video conferencing meeting, you have to look into the camera. You can't really look at them, which is something that is in itself against human nature. So there are all of these different levels of things that have taken place that we had to take into account, and we had to make that decision and make those changes and adapt training for each one of those individuals in terms of what they needed. And so we were able to do it successfully. We went from in March having a customer base and taking on within 30 days or less, we had 4 million new users that came online. And how do you train all of those people, and how do you, help them go through this transition?
I was going to ask you really about the dashboard idea, because I
Sure.
know that you have something that you can look at a glance and know where you are. Could you explain that a little
Yes.
bit further?
So when I'm actually putting on an event or assisting with an event, what I really do is I become the project manager before, because there is all the communication that needs to be done that used to be done either with people meeting in an office. So now we set that up so that's all virtual. But how do you track that? How do you create or how do you communicate once you're inside of the event with everybody being in a different place? Because when you're in a studio, everybody's able to talk. You can use two-way radios, but this becomes a whole new level of how do you get communication across. And so by using a project plan, and then from that project plan, getting all the details from the client. Once I get all the details from the client, and that means details from what their goal is for this event, to who the information about the people that are going to participate in the event. And then from there, what I do is I design and plan the event itself, the order, how the transitions are going to take place, because that is the one thing people miss in making the transition from live to virtual is that all of the transitions that you would normally use in a live event have to come alive in a virtual event. So you have to create those. You're going to need to have people that do video editing. You're going to need graphic artists. You're going to need all of these things. And how do you make that communication work between all of those? So you have a project manager for each one of those teams, each moving part in your production. You have a PM, and then those PMs meet every single week with updates. And you have somebody that is driving the task and the timing. And by the time you're finished, by the time it's production day, what you come up with is the storyboard that you mentioned, Deborah, and this running sheet that you've created based on all of those moving parts. And then this allows my moderators to be able to just run through and see who's on next. And then I separate out so that moderators have individual tasks on the show to make sure that my timing and my smoothness of my transitions are perfect. That way, it makes it almost flawless, except for the fact that it's technology and there's always going to be something. But I have a contingency plan on top of a contingency plan on top of a contingency plan, are fail safes. I hope that answers your question.
It does, but we've got a lot more questions coming in
Sure.
on the question and answer panel. What I'm going to do, I'm going to keep them on the side for the moment. I'm just going to ask Don what he thinks about having contingency plans. Don's in live events, and I know that that landscape has changed completely. So Don, if you would like to talk a little bit about that and about what you've been doing as well, and then I'll come back to the questions as they're appropriate.
Sure. So in live events pre-pandemic, we did almost all of our events in person with some level of streaming. But we were also very adept at using the video tools that were available to help bring video conferencing into and out of our conferences. So when the pandemic hit and we needed to shift to all online, it was actually a pretty natural transition for us. And what became obvious early on was it was less about the content than it was about the experience. And what we focused upon was the presenter's comfort and their experience, and then looked closely at what the audience experience was and made it about the video quality, the signal quality, the visual quality, which people have already mentioned. How do people look on camera? How is their lighting? How is their background? How is their camera? How is their microphone? And for the content itself, the PowerPoint or the video playback, making sure that we had the highest quality source and played it out seamlessly. So we really tried to make all of our events a TV-like production in that manner, and made it made it less about the platform and more about the delivery. So I do have to say that Blue Jeans is actually one of my favorite production tools for remote production, because the event center is just, it's such a dynamic place to produce the events. But it was more about the comfort and the familiarity of the presenters and then of the audience, actually. So when clients would come to us and say, hey, all of our people are using Zoom, we figured out how to use Zoom really, really well. They said, hey, we're using Blue Jeans, we use that really well. So our team had to adapt to that, really to a high degree. So again, it's really about creating that experience and having a good flow. And Michelle, you hit on a lot of things there that are relevant to in-person live event production, which is that run a show, having the script, having a backup plan, everybody knowing their role. And what I'm curious to learn from you is, we're used to having a contingency plan, but the contingency on top of the contingency, I'd like to hear how you figured that out.
Go on.
Through bitter experience, right? That's the best teacher. And so usually we have like a fail safe, something we can cut to if something goes amiss. But a lot of over the summer, especially, a lot of the events that were coming online, they wanted to either stream live to Facebook or they wanted to stream live to YouTube. And so that adds another layer of things that have to be managed. And somebody mentioned earlier, making sure that when you're using an iPhone, that you're not using it in landscape mode when you're making a video. We had a very video heavy event, and we strung those videos together unbeknownst to us that may cause a problem. And so not only was it because of it being in the portrait mode, but it being the only MOV in an MP4 that we had strung together, and that block of videos, which was literally 20 minutes worth of the show, would not play. And it played to us, but it was not playing to Facebook. And so that becomes another layer. So what we built in based on that experience is that we will have a second computer that will stream, and we'll have it already set up to play single videos if we need to in that instance. So it's just a matter of it becomes this project management world, really. And it requires that you, or from a strategy view, it requires that you look at every single aspect. And that is where, in the beginning, getting all the information and really delving in and knowing the details really allows you to be able to build that in.
Yeah, and just to dovetail on that just briefly, we learned by watching what the audience was watching, what worked and what didn't. And drove that to our standards of quality. And then secondarily, we learned that clients thought that they wanted to run their Zooms or Teams or Blue Jeans events. But when we were able to take the pressure off of that, then and actually produce it for them, they got a better result and they were happier for it. And I'll admit that early on, when we were doing some of this work, I was stunned that people would actually pay us to do that work, but we're grateful for it.
Grateful. I'm sure they're more grateful than you are.
I'd like to enter something in here, because one of the most critical parts of creating that experience, right, is, you mentioned having several project managers responsible for their key elements and the graphics and the user experience, but really traditional production and system integration, system design is critical here. The more the contribution to these events is distributed, the more you've got remote panelists, remote audience, and the more interactive they are. If the viewers in the audience will have a chance to ask their questions out loud, to be heard by the person speaking or the group speaking, you really got to plan out, multi-bus audio. Are people wearing in-ear monitors, and if they are, what mix are they getting? Because every tool that we use, whether it's Zoom or Blue Jeans or Rendezvous or Live Call Connect, sometimes these systems are creating their own mix minuses, where the person speaking that audio is taken out of that bus. Sometimes they're not. Sometimes you've got to have, every time I recommend having an audio engineer at a board, with 32, 48 channels and lots of label tapes specifically identifying, if it's a bus, who's in that bus and who's out of that bus, so that if you've got a speaker on set, you don't accidentally, cause some crazy echoes that you wouldn't have to deal with if it was just a regular Zoom meeting, just a regular Blue Jeans attendee. But once you combine all these different sources into, your sort of main program stream to the audience, it gets very complicated very quickly.
If I could just come in here, because we're talking about questions and people being able to voice them. We do have some questions on the panel here, so I'm going to ask them so that we get a good deal of interaction from our audience. They feel participating. One of them is related to Teams and Blue Jeans, and it basically says, are your team meetings all via laptops or soft codecs via PCs, or do you have the Microsoft Teams rooms? Now, I don't know what your guys, I'm opening this out to the panel. I don't know what your experience is of that. From our point of view, it's all soft codecs via laptops, but it obviously depends on the number of employees or what you're using them for.
Yeah, for us at BlackRock, Kevin alluded to it earlier. We have enterprise license for Microsoft products, but you can understand in financial services, it's heavily regulated. And we don't do things quickly because of that very reason. We have to test things and understand the security behind them before we're comfortable with using them. So with regards to how we use Teams at the moment, it's a quite basic level. We use it for instant chat across our entire organization. You can do some project management within there as well. You can link it to Agile if people are familiar with Agile as well to project manage. But in the future, hopefully in the near future, we're going to have video enablement. So we're going to be able to do much more with it.
And Michelle, you were going to comment on that.
Yeah, I was just going to say that we already currently run, so for any Teams video conferencing, we already are the gateway for any conference room environment for Teams. And now we are moving towards being able to launch Blue Jeans meetings inside of Teams to piggyback, just because of the sheer quality of our video conferencing. And, it's like with anything, even with finding an events platform, you have people who are experts in an area, and that is what but in an event nowadays, because it's all virtual, you need somebody that does ticketing, you need someone that does vendor rooms, you need all of these different aspects, and to try and find one platform that does all of those well, probably not going to be a likely scenario. So it's about finding and being able to integrate and work who plays well with others. And Blue Jeans is very interoperable with all of our platforms.
I'd like to bring Jesse in here now, because I know that queuing systems and remote working and communication remotely is a big thing for him. But also, Jesse, if I could also draw your attention to a second question, if you could get some kind of answer in at the same time as answering my question on the queuing. What are some of the challenges your team met with regards to bringing in large video content to the various internal storage places you needed it? And how have you dealt with these challenges, all while staying within the firm's compliant guidelines and security? Now, I think that was probably directed at BlackRock, but I think it applies to all of us, how to transport video, which is obviously increasing, and not everyone can use YouTube. Jesse, do you want to sort of comment on that first, or you can comment on the queuing?
I'll take the queuing question. We sidestep compliance guidelines by, adhering to what our clients request of us. I'd be interested to hear the BlackRock response as you guys are generating your own internal content and needing to stick to those. But with regard to queuing, we've had to use a lot of sort of innovative tools where we'll have a director and a producer in one city and the talent's in another city for sort of cinematic production. And in those circumstances, we had to create a video teleprompter. So rather than just scrolling text, we're actually putting the face of the director on the one-way glass of the teleprompter, so that, you know, they're making the celebrity or the talent feel comfortable when asking the kinds of questions that they needed to get answered, or directing the, you know, the fictitious drama, the way they to elicit what they needed from the person who's, you know, a box shows up on their door and there's a camera in it. That does not feel natural. And so to act or to deliver a seminar, that could require a little extra coaching. And so some of the tools that we've used, as I mentioned, are putting the face of the director where the teleprompter would go, or using, instead of, we were used to using Word documents in teleprompter scripts, and you know, scrolling with a USB shuttle controller to make sure that the speed matches. Well, we needed more real-time communication, and switching back and forth from the regular teleprompter script to the face of the director wasn't always feasible. So we switched to using real-time editable, like essentially Google Documents, so that the director sometimes is speaking to them and sometimes is just typing furiously as though they were, you know, hammering out the script of the teleprompter.
And did you actually encounter some people who weren't even used to using, you know, in-ear monitoring or anything like that? How did all that integrate?
It definitely takes a moment to get accustomed to having somebody in your ear trying to speak to you. So we didn't use it as much for directing the on-camera talent as we did as sort of a program monitor. So we in the control room could hear, you know, the panelist from LA, the doctor from Sydney, all speaking to us. But in order to get the on-camera talent to, in one case, it was a biotechnology company that was doing their annual sales conference. Right? They're used to having an interaction with panelists, sharing the same PowerPoint, delivering a message to the audience. Well, in this case, we had to have the host on the set in front of a green screen and the panelists being remote, but they needed to communicate. And I couldn't just stick speakers on the set because there's microphones on the set. So we used an in-ear monitor exclusively to feed them program. That way, if we were rolling video, they could hear when the video started and stopped. And more essentially, if there were remote panelists, they could hear what was being said, almost like in a satellite uplink situation for a news stand-up interview.
Yes, I mean, it's almost like you need like a totally separate app for the green room bit, because in virtual events, and I'm sure Don will back me up on this, in virtual events, it's all about the rehearsal time beforehand, the preempting of everything, and being able to go into like a private green room before going on, and making sure, holding hands essentially remotely with your presenters.
Absolutely. But we didn't touch on the question about the file transfers and the content. So I would like to just circle back with that briefly. For HB Live, we offer the client a couple of different tools for transferring large files. So and you got to go with whatever they're comfortable with and whatever their security measures allow. So we're doing a lot of Dropbox, and we also have a third-party secure app that we've built in AWS that goes into their S3 platform that people can transfer large files up to. The question is always, seriously, how big is the file and how much time do we have? And we may need to play it live from a remote site if we don't have enough time to transfer it. And I think Jesse would probably say the same thing.
And is it also not about security as well? Secure file storage and being secure when you transfer it?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So and that's the being able to respond to a client's need for security or encryption or privacy, whatever it is. That's where you have to be flexible and almost be platform agnostic. If they give you access to a file on X platform, you have to be able to go and get it and not give them any grief.
Interestingly, at the start of streaming, all we were concerned with was boosting our audience. I want to get the most people watching. You know, I really want my stuff out there. It's a concert. It's a TED Talk. It's something like this. But certainly the normal course of business requires confidentiality. But as we really retreated to a distributed workforce, that led to video production and other kinds of intent need for internal communications being private and being shared only to the people who are after those files.
And it's also about the bandwidth that people are receiving it on. You know, it's all about what they've got. And as I say, some people are in their homes. So you need to have appropriate tools for your method of transport. And also you have to consider whether you're just going from office to office on a really regular basis, and one might be in one continent and one might be in another continent. And you also have to think about how many, where you're sending it from and how many you're sending it to, and how regularly you have to do that as well in terms of you know, video transport. And I know there are lots of companies out there who have really basically stepped up to the plate and can advise their clients on what the best method is, whether they are just transporting it from global office to global office, or whether they need huge quantities of video that they need to be stored, and that needs to be scalable, I guess, because obviously being on the cloud is well, seems to be more scalable than perhaps on premise. We are interested to know anybody's opinion on the scalability and the backup, the kind of backup you require for that.
Well, I'll jump in briefly just to say that from a scalability standpoint, we've had good experience with Amazon Web Services on their S3. I mean, we can transfer, I think our limit is 5 terabytes. So then it's really a matter of their bandwidth and the amount of time that they have to transfer. You know, and even Dropbox with, you know, or the other file transfer tools can give you a virtually unlimited amount of storage. And we're really just talking about the content that might be played as a part of the event. So there are other ways to deal with that by having it played remotely. And, you know, and I'm not sure if the guys from BlackRock are dealing with this with their internal communications as well.
Yeah, I mean, for BlackRock, it's a challenge for us because, as I said earlier, we're a financial services, and there's a heavy amount of information security that we have to be very, very security conscious of. We mentioned Dropbox earlier. That's just one of the platforms that we just cannot use. So if somebody tries to share a Dropbox with us, it's an absolute no. And there has to be pretty much one solution for that type of scenario. So we use different apps to do that. And in terms of sort of workflow, we've also got an app where we can host green room conversations before a sort of panel record, and that also, so that records to the cloud, but also does isolated records to the device as well, which we've found very useful. So if there is any sort of issue with the connection, as I think I'm experiencing video issues with my connection right now, we can just get that isolated record and send it through Box, which is what we do use to do the post-event edit if required.
Don, did you want to reply to that? Because I see you're highlighted on my screen.
Oh, no. I typed a comment to one of our audience.
Yes, I can see you acting there. I mean, we've got lots of questions about the future, how people think what will stay the same now that we're all in a virtual situation. There's a question here: what will happen with the COVID intensive media information transfer technology and techniques if the world returns to offices? I mean, how many of your companies are actually going to return to the office in the normal way? Don wants to answer that first.
Yeah, I'll jump in on that first. So there's a few things at play with this. So there's the transfer from home office back into their brick and mortar, which is going to impact the way that they interact if they're still joining meetings and events on their computer, isolated from an in-person crowd. Now you've got quality issues. You've got to worry about the CDN, your bandwidth, your network. You've got to, how do you continue to engage with people that are not in the office, right? So there's this level of technical challenges as well as the human-centered challenge to it. And I think that from what I've spoken with many of our corporate clients, there's going to be a return to the office in a more structured way. So they're always going to be allowed to work from home to a degree, but then they will be required to come into the office to a degree.
And Michelle, obviously you're based remotely, you were before that. I mean, what's going to be the situation when things start to open up and lift?
The way I see it, and the impact in terms of BlueJeans and video conferencing, is, from what I gather from people, just conversations, is that a lot of people are like, you know what, this has opened up a whole new world, and we really don't have to be in brick and mortar. You'll find that even Verizon, who now owns BlueJeans, they have shut down a lot of their brick and mortar, and they are people. I know a person that works for an insurance company, a large insurance company, and it's probably about 60% of their staff is not going back into the office. So this has really changed the level in the world and the way we do business. And I think that you will have people that will be able to go into the office sometimes, because you still need that camaraderie, you still need that in social environment to some degree. But I think that the level in which this has changed is going to be more significant than most people think.
And Jesse, do you think you'll still be using your your remote teleprompting systems and all the systems that you've now devised and work incredibly well?
I think that we're going to use them even more. I think that what we've learned from so much BlueJeans and Teams and Zoom use and virtual webinars is that 90% of the meetings we thought must be in person, even those didn't have to be in person. And so when you don't have to fly, if you're paying a director $1,000 a day to shoot a commercial, and you got to pay for his ticket, hotel, and meals, you might want to just save that cash if you've got an effective two-way communication system. Not that they'll necessarily be into it, but maybe they've had an experience and they prefer to sleep in their own home at night and be with their kids in the morning. As Michelle identified, it opened up a world of possibilities.
And obviously we've got questions about on the screen. Michelle, I'm going to let you answer that one about the presentations and the signer in a separate window. I mean, we do that in live events all the time using picture in picture, but obviously we're not as au fait with it as BlueJeans, because you're running events remotely. Did you want to type it in, or do you want to?
I was typing it in, but I'll answer it out loud. That's perfectly fine. Depending on the platform that you're using and what its capabilities are, what I find is instead of trying to figure that out and then trying to find the right platform that's going to do that, I go with the platform that's going to give me the most features and the most functionality and give me the best quality and performance. And then what I use is an OBS software, which is a free software that you can get on the internet that will allow you to create a split screen or a picture in picture, and gives you all the ability to bring in other feeds or to put yourself in front of your presentation. And it's not something that's super difficult to learn. I did a crash course in it one night and did a webinar on it the next day. So these are the types of things, and this is just what this world has created, that whatever skill set you had initially, you're gonna you have to figure out and adapt to whatever the situation is. And Google is my best friend. I go out and do searches about different things all the time to figure out and YouTube, and then I learned how to do it on YouTube so that I'm able to create whatever the client needs. We're in the solution-based business, and so I'm sure Donald and everyone on the call can attest that whatever you come to us with, we are going to find a solution for it, no matter what we need to do. And this has just been, it's actually been a lot of fun. It was stressful in the beginning, but now that we're well past a year of this, that it has become the norm. And I actually invite people to come up with scenarios for me to try and come up with a solution for. So.
A lot
And I
of
was gonna,
cottage
sorry,
industries have popped up around similar needs like this.
Mhm.
You know, there were always live translators at multi-language live events. Now the automated captioning in multi-language and multi-translation, situations are available as a service. And so for the ingenuity that popped up, either from smaller organizations or even from larger ones that are solving their own needs and then making those tools available to others that are using them, it's interesting. It's not so far to expect that there may be, live sign language interpretation as a service for virtual events.
It's actually happening right now. My sister is a sign language interpreter, and she does it for schools, and they're doing it on Zoom, or whatever platform they're using. And in events, it's just a matter of taking that stream and making it visible as a picture-in-picture on the screen. And again, you can do that through the OBS software, so that the people that need the interpretation are able to see that, as well as the live audience is able to see and hear at the same simultaneously. So, I mean, like I said, this pandemic has opened up a whole new world. It has changed everything is what we called normal, but it has opened up, so as Jesse so eloquently put it, infinite possibilities. It's just a
and
matter of
people have changed their they've changed their minds about so much. I mean, I used to have interpreters in, and they wanted to be in the same room. They didn't even want the sound and vision relayed to them so they interpret. They wanted to see the person absolutely 180 degrees opposite them and make sure they could see their lips. And nowadays, of course, interpretation is remote in the same way as everything else is. But I'd like to sort of bring this round to BlackRock, because I know there's another question in the box which talks about how they exclusively use Teams, but they found it lacks creativity. I mean, obviously, Teams have got lots of, they've been evolving as the pandemic's gone on as well. But did you find, BlackRock, Kevin and James, did you find that Teams evolved fast enough for you and that it did satisfy most of your needs?
Well, I alluded to it earlier. We only really use Teams at the moment for instant messaging and some project management. We know it can do far more than that, and that's probably coming in the future. But we don't use Teams for anything more than that. So we don't look for that creativity that you're suggesting. We do, however, use a variety of other platforms to communicate with that does have that interactivity, that creativity. We have another one of our services is event production. That used to be in-person events, so at hotels and conference centers, and we would have a whole host of video content and other very engaging and interactive content during those shows. Now it's, of course, all virtual. So we're using a variety of different platforms to deliver that. That's how we're treating that type of service. And actually, we touched upon it earlier, the future, what that might look like. I think for us at BlackRock, it's too early to say what might happen. Me personally, I think we're going to have a hybrid model, and I think most corporates will, certainly in the UK, where people will work some of the time in the office and some of the time from home. I don't think, and I think everyone will agree with this, you can replace that human contact, in-person contact, and the power of collaboration when you're actually in the same room as somebody or in the same office. So I think we're going to have a model where we'll be in the office some of the time and delivering our services like we did before March 2020. And we'll have a model where we also have people working remotely and servicing staff and clients that work remotely as well. So I think our world's going to get busier, certainly, because we're going to have to cope with both scenarios. And in fact, so if we're just focusing on the sort of virtual event side, we're going to have events that are in person when we can. We're going to have events that are virtual, and we're going to have events that are a mix of the two. So we'll have in-person events where we're dialing in people virtually, or all, some of the audience virtually. So I can see it continuing to grow, the demand and the need to grow our resources, certainly.
Don, do you want to?
Yeah, I just like to comment. There's a lot of questions coming in related to Microsoft Teams. So you have to remember that the origin of Microsoft Teams was as an internal communication and collaboration platform. It was intended for meetings and basic communication. They added Microsoft Stream as a mechanism to deliver that content to a broader audience with more efficiency in the network. If you look at Zoom and BlueJeans and the other conferencing platforms, they have a meeting platform and they have an event platform. And there's a reason for that, because they're used in different ways. So when we start talking about Microsoft Teams, be very careful in what you ultimately want to accomplish and how you actually get there, because there's a tool for the job you're trying to do, and Microsoft Teams is likely not it. Sorry, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
They do have Microsoft Event now, which obviously takes thousands and thousands of participants, because it's a different tool.
It illustrates Don's point. Yeah, different tools.
Right. And, again, it's the same thing we were talking about earlier, trying to find one tool that does all inclusively, does everything with quality is a bad idea from the start, because it's just not realistic. So that's why I was saying you get your base tool and then you find other things to integrate, and you use things like OBS, or you use a hardware switcher, or you use Jesse, I look forward to like really picking your brain because I have a couple of things that we're trying to figure out how to accomplish. But there is a way to do that out there that will work with whatever you find. But if Microsoft is great at the things that they do, but they're trying to give you one tool that encompasses everything, and you're not going to have the quality that you're looking for a conference type or webinar type production. It's not going to be possible. I mean, as it is, that is the reason why they incorporated us to use for their gateway. Like the video portion of anything, if it's terrible, then it doesn't matter what your content is. It doesn't matter who your audience is. It doesn't matter who your presenters are. You can have the best people in the world. If the quality of the video to start with is bad, then your production is already dead in the water. So those are the things you want to focus in on, things that are absolutely critical to whatever your event is that you're putting on. And then from there, you base what platform you use, and then you find out how you can incorporate these gentlemen have great knowledge. And like I said, I'm looking forward to finding out more, but then you incorporate people that know how to do it. So you're not recreating the wheel if you want to have the best quality experience for your audience.
Don't forget the audio. When you say video,
yes,
audio is the thing that's overlooked at webinars.
But what I was saying is that if the video is bad from the beginning, the audio could be great, but if the video is bad, then you're shot in the foot. And the same is true. You're absolutely right. If the audio is terrible, then it doesn't matter what great quality video you have. So that's what I'm saying. You want to find a platform that does those major things well, and then you kind of expand from there to figure out which way to go.
And I was going to ask, does anybody want to ask this question about OBS and generally about compatibility? I mean, obviously, New Tech have developed NDI, and I know that there's going to be a power hour on this subject specifically into the summer. But I mean, obviously, the industry is evolving all the time, and I think they're really rising up to the challenge. OBS is a free piece of software, but there are other software, commercial software applications out there which are which have developed further, which are a bit more powerful. And as you say, if you don't want to use software, there's the choice of using hard switches. I just think there's going to be more choice, and that the compatibility issue will get less. I mean, at the moment, the commercial side is developing quite rapidly. So I would say wait 10 minutes and you'll have something that will be compatible. I mean, does anybody else agree with me?
Yeah, so specifically to the question about platforms integrating OBS or video production like features into their actual platform, I think, yes, you're going to see that. How well it works will depend on who coded it and what their experience is. Because if they're if they're a non-production professional, they may add features that accomplish the goal, but are so hard to use that nobody's going to do it.
And since it's almost built in, it's so easy now to treat OBS as your webcam or to treat an NDI source as a webcam. You know, let the conferencing organizations focus on conferencing. Let the production, composition, editing, effects guys focus on that, and find an integrator that can bring your event together that, you know, utilizes all of those.
That is key. Letting the experts do what they do.
On that note, I noticed that Marcella has appeared and that perhaps our time is up. I'd forgotten the time, as always got led astray by the discussion. Marcella, it must be time. I'm just going to say thank you to all our presenters. It's been a great discussion, and I know Marcella is going to add something about when we can all get together again and discuss it further, albeit maybe as the audience.
Yes, thank you so much, all the speakers today. We appreciate your time. And thank you, listeners, for joining us today. This recording will be available on avixa.org/webinars within about 5 business days. And your 1 RU credit will be applied to your transcripts within 5 to 7 business days. If you have any trouble, please contact webinars@avixa.org. A huge thank you to Deborah and guests for providing insights into best practices for communication. Our next Content Distribution and Media Power Hour webinar will be held on May 12th. The topic is Media Content Security. With more devices connected to the network, increased wireless access, and greater content and data volume, the complexity and number of points to secure becomes daunting. To register, go to avixa.org/events. We hope you've enjoyed. Have a great day. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.